Welcome to the Student Success Podcast. I'm Al Solano, founder of the Continuous Learning Institute, or CLI, a higher education online resource focused on providing community college and open access university educators with practical information on how to get results at their campus. As a resource within CLI, the Student Success Podcast is focused on just that, the challenges, opportunities, failures, and successes of practices intended to improve student success and equity. The goal is to leave you with thought-provoking ideas, nuts and bolts information, and or lessons learned from the field so you can consider how you might apply them to your institutional context. For today's podcast, it's a pleasure to have Dr. Steve Bautista, professor, counselor, and the coordinator for the Center for Teacher Education at Santa Ana College, California. Dr. Bautista also serves as the current president of the Association of California Community College Teacher Education Programs and was previously an executive board member of the National Association of Community College Teacher Education Programs. Among a host of recognitions, Dr. Bautista was named one of 5 Orange County Teachers of the Year and was selected by his community college peers to earn the Distinguished Faculty Award for Teaching Excellence. So it's a pleasure to have you as part of the Student Success Podcast, Steve.
Thank you, Al. It's a pleasure to be here. I've listened to this podcast for a number of months now that you've been putting them out, learned a ton. I've known you for quite a while. Happy to be here and to be invited to participate. Thank you.
When I start the podcast, I'd like to ask guests something beyond their work, a hobby, a talent, or a superpower they wouldn't mind sharing. So what would you like to share?
Yeah, I was thinking about this because I have listened to other podcasts and trying to figure out what I would share. And I think what I would probably share with you is that, one of the things that I do outside of my work, that's really something that's been part of my own personal self-care and just something that's helped me get centered with my work is running. So growing up, I never enjoyed running. I played sports, but the running piece of it was either I had to be being chased by somebody or had a ball at my feet. That was the way that I enjoyed running and never just enjoyed running for running's sake. About 10 years ago, I decided to get off the couch and get out and start running. I just turned a little over 40. I was 42 at the time. Started running and just kind of fell in love with the goal setting, the journey, the emotional, spiritual, physical natures of part of running. Surprised myself in a lot of different ways. Ended up running an 8K and then running a half marathon. And then at the end of the half marathon, realizing, this is the farthest I'm ever going to do. 13.1 miles. That's pretty much it. And then with the encouragement of friends and continued running, I ended up running the LA Marathon in 2014. So 26.2 miles, accomplishing that feat really was something that it changed me. It changed my abilities, my view of my abilities of myself really has got me hooked. So continue to run to this day to stay healthy.
A full marathon. A lot of respect, man. Wow. Tell me a little bit about that journey, because it's not just you running. Often there's a support group involved somehow in one way, shape, or form, whether it be family or friends. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, when I was running by myself, I could feel the mental aspect of it all. My legs hurt. I'm so tired. My knees hurt. How much farther? I can't breathe. All of those things enter your mind. But I actually got from a friend of mine, a colleague at Santa Ana College. She hooked me up with a running group, and in that running group, that community that I was able to build and connect with. And when you're out there and you're able to just to talk and to be with other people, you're actually able to run farther together. And I think there's a phrase that goes, an old adage that says, if you want to run fast, run alone. But if you want to run far, run together. And that really helped me, because to train for the marathon, I had no experience at all and had to lean on my colleagues and friends, my running friends who had done this work before, to lead me in that whole process. And we were able to do that in 2014. And since then I ran a second marathon and multiple other half marathons after that. But that also, again, that whole learning a lot about yourself and learning about, as you're indicating, this journey together is really something that not only works for running, but also in other parts of life as well. So that's what I've learned.
I run maybe 3 times a week. I hate it. I don't like running. My body keeps telling me, why are you doing this to me? And I still, after years and years and years, even in the military, I didn't care for running. How you just 10 years ago decided, I'm going to try this, and then you run a marathon. That's just incredible. Congratulations. And as you mentioned earlier, we've known each other for a long time. I started my career in K-12, and then I was so fortunate to make the transition in the early 2000s to the community college system. And one of the areas that I focused on was future teachers. How do we support them? That's where I met you, and you're one of the most, if not the most knowledgeable person on the role of community colleges in teacher education. And as I think about this marathon that you ran, and you and I know that just navigating to become a teacher could be a marathon. And so there's a metaphor in there, right, about future teachers and the fact that we have the community college system. They account for about half or a little over half of all students in higher ed. Given the teacher shortages that have been ongoing, but now they're much more pronounced, it's even more important today to really think about how do we recruit, capture those students, ignite their interest, their passion for teaching, and then how do we support them? Please unpack your role in helping to prepare future teachers.
Yeah. So, I mean, in my professional role as a counselor and program coordinator, I get the opportunity to sit with students and meet with them when they begin community college. And many teachers today, I think the data shows that over half of the teachers today knew they wanted to become a teacher before they enter college. So it's one of those professions where that students kind of know at the point of entry that this is something that they want to do. And over my past 22 years or 23 years of doing this work, when I talk with students about why they want to become a teacher, it's significant in the fact that their experience through K through 12 and their experience with other educators and other teachers really has a profound impact on their own desire to do this work in the future, right? Whether it is a positive experience that they had with an educator who saw their potential, saw who they were, maybe acknowledged some of the challenges they were experiencing and helped them navigate those challenges, that inspires students to want to do this moving forward and want to be that type of role model or same type of support person to other students coming through. The other piece of it is we have students who have had negative experiences through K through 12. And that's probably because I work with a lot of students who come from first generation, low income backgrounds, immigrants. And a lot of the K-12 systems are not set up to support the specific needs of those students, nor do we have the teacher diversity that represents those students in those communities. And so they felt moving through their K through 12 educational experience that there was a disconnect there, and they want to return back to their community, back to their schools, to be a role model for others and to change the system in a lot of different ways. The challenges that we face with community colleges, and you're right, there's a lot of students who begin community college, higher education community college, but the data is really surprising about how many teachers start community college. So the national data shows that about 20% of all teachers in the United States begin their journey in community college. About 50% of all teachers in the US actually do some portion of their education in a community college. And in California, it's even more profound. So over half, 55% of the teachers who are credentialed by the California State University system begin their journey, educational journey, in a community college. And so we are a significant starting point for teachers. And in California, again, we have the most diverse student population in the state. Making sure that we have really good pathways, clear pathways, and support for students is really critically important. As I've journeyed with students through this process and seeing some of the challenges and kind of the barriers that they face, they're not different than other professions, but the pathway is pretty complicated to become a teacher in most states. Certifications and tests and other kinds of requirements that we need really specialized support for those students and pre-professional support that helps them navigate the pathway and give them the tools to be successful once they reach the classroom as a a credentialed teacher.
So let's unpack some of the supports to help them along their path.
Sure. Yeah. So, this work is really important to me, and it's something again that I've done professionally. But it was also part of my a doctoral dissertation that I just completed last year. For me, as someone who'd been a practitioner for many, many years, I really wanted to understand and really dig deeper into some of the practices and some of the experiences of students. And so I interviewed, my study was interviewing Latinx community college students who began in community college but had since transferred to the universities on a teacher preparation pathway. And really asking them about what were the things that really made a difference for them to get from community college into the university. The group that I had interviewed, half of them had been a part of a teacher preparation program while in community college, and the other half had not. And it just happened to be like that in terms of the sample that I drew. I didn't mean to do that sample, but that's how it kind of ended up kind of shaping out. And the experiences were profound in terms of what the students who were part of teacher preparation programs at community college were able to, the services they were to provide or get connected with. One of it was building a community of future educators who were at their community college. In California, our state, our teacher credential program is post-baccalaureate. So the students do their teacher education program after they have a bachelor's degree. And we don't have undergraduate majors in education as they do in other states. And so we have students who come to the community college and they're in various different programs and majors, but they all have the same goal of becoming a teacher. So building that community was really important to them, as well as really helping to get specialized advisement from community college counselors who were very familiar with the teacher preparation, the state teacher preparation pathways and requirements, and helping them navigate those throughout their community college journey and then on to transfer. And then also the other thing was getting really robust early fieldwork experiences while they were in community college. So this really gave those students the opportunity to have fieldwork experiences, observations, or even employment in K through 12 to give them really hands-on experience in the teaching profession and connecting with current teachers in the field. That was really, something that was enlightening for me and really validating, actually, given my own experience of observing it and hearing that play out in the data. And the other thing that's not surprising, probably cuts across all future teachers, all not just future teachers, but all community college students, was the role of professors in their experience. When I asked students, who were the people that made the most difference, it was always two groups. One were professors. That was the first group, and they were able to identify by name those professors who supported them, who inspired them, who gave them the extra support that they needed, who inspired them with really good teaching. And that was one of the findings that I came up with, is that the professors that the students I identified, one of the factors that really inspired them was that they were really good teachers and inspired them to this is how you do that in the classroom, as well as being engaging, connecting, and identifying with some of their own identities, ethnic, cultural identities, and helping them validate them, as well as, you're a really good writer. Have you ever thought becoming an English teacher? Right? That was something that also really lit students up in terms of their pathway through community college. And then the second group was counselors who were able to help navigate, as I shared earlier. So yeah, I think that's kind of, unpacking what the experience might be like for students and how to build robust programs in community colleges. I think those were some of the things that I learned and got validated through my own study.
You named 4 factors and you unpacked a little bit the role of faculty. Can you provide examples of how, and it could be a local example, you've done such great work. You've helped hundreds, if not thousands, of students become future teachers. The building community, can you provide an example of that? Just an example of how the special advisement counseling looks like. Also, just a little bit about when they do their fieldwork, they're observing, but anything else about that experience for students, if you can unpack those 3, that'd be great. Thank you.
This idea of building community, as I shared earlier, our state in California does teacher preparation at the post-baccalaureate level. And so at the undergraduate level, students are in majors and they're not in majors specifically with other future teachers. So to give an example, like accounting students, right? If you're going to become an accountant, you take classes that are called accounting, and most of those students who are in those classes are going to be accountants or other business majors. In education, in California, what we've done is we're asking students at the undergraduate level to focus in on subject matter preparation, right? Becoming competent in math and reading and English and social sciences, all those areas. And so the students are spread out, particularly at their freshman and sophomore levels in those classes. And so having students identify themselves as future teachers and then bringing together in community, for example, through future teacher clubs or even special programs where we bring them together and have once a month meetings, do their pre-professional development, to talk about becoming a teacher, talk about good pedagogical skills, talk about things that are important to becoming a pre-professional educator on the journey, the testing processes, the requirements, introducing them to universities, bringing them on field trips, and even having university experiences where these students collectively can work together with university faculty members and kind of build community, but also understand what's in front of them when they're ready to transfer. So that idea of building community with other future teachers helped give them a support system so that when they were going to those general education classes, that American government class that's part of their pathway, they could sit alongside with other future teachers. And even we've also created learning communities, for example, in general education that was specifically designed for future teachers. So for many, many years, I taught a learning community at public speaking and a future teachers career class to really help, develop the public speaking skills and build community of future educators in the classroom as well. That's one way that we built community and that the students felt supported. And then when they transferred to the university, had peers that they had, been connected with while they're in community college. The second piece is the advisement. Sadly, it's really, really complicated to become a teacher in California and probably most states, right? The certification process, the testing process, all those kinds of things. It just becomes a lot of bureaucracy and it just keeps get layered further and further. And so having a counselor who can guide them through that process and encourage them to navigate some of those challenges and barriers is really important. And then just in general, I think with most community college students, they're not only doing school, they're juggling life. And their life sometimes is really complicated. And what counselors can help do is help them navigate not only the academic part of it, but also some of the life journey things, right? And helping them when, things get really stressful and really challenging, a counselor can help the student kind of overcome that barrier or even see a way around a barrier that the student maybe didn't know that they even had, right? They're not able to pass a class and that counselor is able to show them about how they can repeat a course and use academic renewal. And those kinds of things provide a lot of motivation and agency and hope for those students to be able to reach their goal. So I think that's the second piece you wanted me to talk about. And the third piece in terms of field work is there's not only a teacher shortage, but there's also a shortage of staff in schools now. And I think as I'm seeing now, the pandemic is making it way worse. I had a friend share with me that, because of some of the vaccine issues, that the schools are going to be losing a lot of staff members. And so not only educators, but also paraeducators, folks that work in after school programs, those kinds of things. And so helping students get employment in schools is really a really significant piece to their journey in community college, because then they can work. They have really steady employment, and those jobs are sometimes, 1 o'clock till 6 o'clock, and it fits well with their school schedule. They're plugged into the school culture, and they can really begin to see what it's like to become a teacher and work in a school environment while they're in community college, and also provide for themselves with a salary and an income. So those are part of the things that we've done, and then also build really robust partnerships with our K-12 schools to kind of create internships and fieldwork opportunities and all of those things, so students can really see what it's like. And when students have that experience, I think that's like the big light bulb moment. Like, yeah, I can see myself doing this, or even maybe I need to think about a different occupation, which is fine. But yeah, so I think those are the three things I think you wanted me to kind of share a little bit more on in terms of detail. And yeah.
So you mentioned the pandemic. Has had such a significant impact on society. How do you do all this in a virtual environment? What's really interesting is that as we begin to hopefully see light at the end of the tunnel with this pandemic and more students returning back to campuses, at least the initial data that I'm seeing, it isn't most students prefer online now, or, oh, no. Students really miss in person. The majority of them want to go back. Well, I'm seeing different data, actually. I'm seeing students saying, listen, there's a level of convenience now that I've never had. And so there are some courses that I love taking online. It's very convenient. And so long as the pedagogy is sound, if it's engaging, if I'm learning, I'm cool with online. But you know what? There are other courses that I want to go there in person. So it's not this has to be this bucket or that bucket. Students, we have to really listen to them. And I think what they're saying is, I just like now these options. As you know, many institutions of higher ed, as even community colleges, maybe some of them only offered 10% of courses online. And now they had to learn how to do most of them online. And there were some that were already doing, 50, 60% of courses online as an option. And they were able to weather this storm a bit better. For future teachers, because we don't know what's in store with us, are we going to have another variant? The fact that so many people don't want to mask or don't want to do the right things for the collective. How do you do these services, Steve, in a virtual environment?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Al. And I think, I think the pandemic and the switch to virtual, and again, just looking from my own experience as an educator doing this work for the past, couple decades, it really sunshined a lot of places where we could have been doing things a lot better, forced us into those modes quicker and more at scale. For example, being good online teachers. I mean, I think that we saw that coming for a long time, this need to expand online environments and support and opportunities for students because of their busy lives and their need to balance their work and their family and school. I think it allowed or forced community colleges and a lot of institutions of higher education to make that shift pretty quickly. But you're right in terms of trying to figure out what's the best formula moving forward. We're all still in the testing mode, right? We'll try new things. We'll try things remotely. We'll try things in person. We'll try things in different ways, and we've done them before to see what really is going to be the most effective way. Yeah, and even we're trying to plan our spring schedules. What does that look like in terms of how much percentage of remote fully online, how much is remote live, which we're calling, which is more of like the Zoom, live classes where students are watching the course in real time, but via Zoom. So just trying to figure out how to navigate all of that. The challenge that we experience with teacher education is that, I think a lot of the philosophical approach to education itself is education is not a transaction, it's transformational, right? And part of that transformational work happens when people are collectively in the same space together and in relationship with each other and in community with each other. And, that the learning that takes place and the true work of teaching happens when there's a deeper connection there. And the connection is much harder and it takes much higher skill level, I think, of teachers to do that remotely. I know specifically for our campus, most of our education courses have returned to in-person because of the need to be collectively in the same space, obviously with, COVID safeties and protocols. And I think our students are responding to that, that they want to be in community with each other and in class together. That's difficult. The other piece that's difficult is as our future teachers have a need and a requirement to be in K through 12 schools for the observation hours that are part of the teacher preparation pathway. We're having to navigate with trying to work collectively with our K-12 districts, whether or not they're even going to allow volunteers or allow observations, given some of the strict natures of the protocols and those kinds of things. So that is exacerbating some of the barriers and the challenges and potentially the teacher shortages if we can't get our future teachers in with current teachers to get the observation hours that they need. So yeah, it's difficult, but what I keep telling my students, my teachers, is like, you need to have really good technology skills if you're going to become a teacher, because this is the way forward, right? We knew that before with cell phones and mobile phones and computers in their pockets. Now it's even more exacerbated. And then the relational piece of it too is that they really need to develop strong relational skills related to connecting with students. And then the third piece is the other pandemic, the social pandemics, and the social pandemics that we've been experiencing related to anti-Black racism and anti-Asian racism and all the social ills that we've been experiencing lately as well, is that we really need teachers who are equipped with the tools to be able to provide inclusive spaces in their classrooms, who are really to work with a diverse population of students, and to help address some of these really the social ills that we're also experiencing over the past several decades.
Yes, I want to focus a little bit on these social ills because you see nationally, education and teachers are under attack in K-12 and in higher ed. Teaching history for some is considered anathema. Why do we want to teach about slavery? Why do we want to teach about the Civil War? Why do we want to teach about the Civil Rights Movement? It's gotten to a point. Fortunately, it doesn't happen really much at all in California. But you heard recently in Texas, they want to both sides this. So if you're teaching about the Holocaust, oh, please give a opposing view. Like there's an opposing view to teaching the Holocaust. Are you finding any future teachers who are seeing what's happening in the national debate? How's that impacting them? Are they concerned, or are they just ignoring it for the most part and focus on their studies?
It's interesting. Last year, in the midst of the pandemics that we were experiencing, we actually saw at Santa Ana College a spike in the participation rate and interest of students in becoming teachers. And when I began talking with students about their interest in becoming a teacher, that's kind of one of the first questions I kind of asked them, like, "What's the dream? Why is this important to you?" They actually articulated specifically what you said, is they see what's going on in their communities and the United States, and they want to be a part of the change, right? And they want, and it's interesting that the students, because of their own personal K-12 experiences and because their own experiences as first generation college students, as new immigrants, and from communities that have been oppressed and marginalized, and identities that have been oppressed and marginalized, they really want to they see teachers and education as a way to make a difference, right? Just as we saw nurses and doctors and other public service, they see themselves as those change agents. And what we've underestimated, I think, in California for a long time is the critical consciousness that these future teachers have at the beginning of their education that we can use to help as motivation to move them and move them through the pathway to become these change agents. And so they have felt it, they experienced it, they feel it in their own communities, they feel it in their experience in life, and they want to be a part of the change. And so we started having discussions about these really important things, helping unpack some of what they experienced, what some of the systemic injustices and things that are in place now, and how we need to begin to dismantle them, and how, from as educators, they can see their role in doing this. It provides a lot of hope for me. And if we can just get more students through the pipeline from community college into universities and becoming teachers, then this could be really a wave of this next generation to be able to help transform our educational system. Future educators that represent, look like, and come from the communities that they want to serve is critically important piece to solving some of these social ills. I'm hoping, continue to be hopeful, that we can find the next generation of teachers and empower them to be the change agents they want to be in schools and in their communities.
Wow, that's beautiful. So in the midst of all the chaos, all of the I mean, it's racism that we're seeing in the country, and the fact that that motivated students to now I want to go to. I didn't know that, Steve. So
Yeah.
that made my day. Actually, I was highly critical of. I don't even want to mention his name. He's this big political commentator, and he's recently wrote a book. He's going out and trying to, sell his book, but he just really bashes higher ed, and he bashes this current generation. This is an entitled generation that if I don't get it this moment, then, and he makes this broad generalizations about students and about just higher ed in general. And you know what? He's a much older gentleman. His generation was responsible for the climate crisis that we're in, that widening of between the rich and the poor, that gap. His generation was full of just misogynists and racists and homophobes. And he kind of pits generation versus generation, which I think is really stupid. He's just such a lazy thinker. Anyway, my point is community college students, especially, and those who go to open access universities, they don't have the luxury to be entitled. This is the most tolerant generation we've ever had in terms of your sexual orientation, your background. And so I just love that to hear this story that here you are, they know it's going to be tough. You teach them about the realities of being a teacher, and then they're like, I'm in. So thank you for sharing that. Now, on something else that you've been involved in your campus from the very beginning, as you know, a lot of colleges throughout the country have been focused on trying to plan and implement the guided pathways framework. And you have been a part of your campus's guided pathways core team. As part of guided pathways, they are this dirty word, meta major. I now call it more of an academic and career community. But most colleges created these academic and career communities. And what I love at your campus is that you have one dedicated to education. I believe it's called a Future Educators Career and Academic Pathway. You've done a lot of work there. You've also piloted the college's first success team around this academic and career community. Can you unpack that a little bit more? Tell us about that.
Yeah, so Santa Ana College is one of the colleges in California that had the opportunity to get an earlier start with some of the national groups to begin guided pathways. So I'm trying to think if we're in year 4 or 5 of our efforts so far. But as we've done this work, Santa Ana College has acknowledged that future educators, is an important pathway. They actually, as part of the 7 that we created, the career and academic pathways, we created one called Future Educators. And that includes our child development program, our education program, and then we have a library technology program that leads to library assistants, and then future librarians as well. So we group those programs, degrees and certificates into that pathway. And it's the smallest pathway at our college. And so given it was the smallest pathway, they decided to pilot the success teams around that group to see what kind of infrastructure we could build and what kind of supports and goals we could create, and kind of let us give the test run. And so we were able to do that at our college. We have 2 student success coaches, a counselor liaison, a financial aid liaison, a career center representative, and then administrative support with data, an administrative lead. I'm missing somebody else, but so that's the group moved forward with kind of creating some goals for our career academic pathway and success team, and tried to implement them, and then shared that with the rest of the campus as we built out the rest of the success teams. And so it was, I think, really successful in the fact that we were able to use that year to really try to focus in on how we might be able to communicate what our pathway was about, to help students get connected with counseling resources, get connected with financial aid so that they could get the support that they needed financially to afford college, and then just try to get plugged in with all the other services that were available to them. So we are now in year 2 of our success coaches. No, this is year 3. Sorry, of our success teams. Sorry, it's all kind of blurs together when you're in the pandemic. It all feels like it's all a bunch of Mondays all strung together. But yeah, so I think it's year three, and yeah, the teams are all kind of developing and moving along. I know you supported us with our college's efforts to get us launched with our cross-functional teams and getting this all planned. So it's been good, and but I still feel that it's not enough for our state. I think our state, California specifically, this idea of everything is done at the post baccalaureate level, and kind of it's all left up to a little bit of chance for students to make it there, future teachers to make it there, is I think one of the structural barriers that exists for California in meeting our goals of preparing diverse teachers. But I think at least our future educators cap gives the arms to wrap around our students and the support to wrap around them when they come and begin college and they say they want to become a teacher. We can be there for them, and we provide a lot of pre-professional support, a regional conference that we put on every year, and a lot of other things that really help them stay engaged and connected with other future teachers.
I like what you're doing. It's something I've encouraged all campuses actually that build out success teams per academic and career community. There's been a lot of criticism about guided pathways. For example, oh well, we shouldn't be doing this. Really, it's a race neutral framework. And my argument has been, I'm glad it is, and here's why. If it started as a racial equity framework, it wouldn't have gotten off the ground, especially nationally. You think in the South they would have started implementing guided pathways if it was a racial equity framework? So what I appreciate about the framework is that it gives us this student journey framework with some suggested strategies by disaggregating the data, looking at the data, like you mentioned someone that's helping you support with data. Then you can apply what we hear a million times, that equity lens, right? And that equity lens is highly nuanced because how you apply it at Santa Ana might be different from, let's say, a college in the Central Valley, depending on their student makeup. And so you're showing how you take a agnostic, race neutral framework and how to help these students who are disproportionately impacted, who want to go back to those communities to become future teachers. The other cornerstone of guided pathways is actually developmental ed reform. A lot of people in California see them as separate. AB 705 is that legislation that says we got to really revamp developmental ed. No more testing students into the dev ed wilderness. Well, they'll never really, most of them will never see a transfer level course. And this was particularly hurting our students of color. Can you speak to how developmental ed reform, AB 705, how that's had an impact on future teachers? Are you seeing more of them because now a lot of them are not in that English and math developmental ed sequence, all those steps to finally get into a transfer level English and math?
Yeah, I can talk to it specifically about future teachers, but also my role as a counselor, I also see and have been seeing the general population of students who begin community college. I began in this field when we were doing a lot of the assessment testing and placing students into really, really low levels of math and English, and just doing so much harm to them unintentionally. But now seeing how we've been able to move away from that, it feels like a lot more students, as they enter college, are not being faced with this big wall like, okay, I'm glad that you went to 4 years of high school and it looks like you did, this level of math at your senior year. But according to our test, you need to go back and do, pre-algebra. That discussion, although I had it, and shamefully I hang my head that was a conversation I had to have with so many students. We're not doing that anymore, and students are able to go right into college level math and college level English, and we've built our support systems, and it's such a different way to think about. And as a counselor, I really had to think differently about what we were doing. Again, I didn't even trust it for a while. I was like, really? We're just going to let students in based on their high school GPA into English and math? Because I had been, totally indoctrinated into the system that we had previously. Like, oh my gosh, they need a test score. If they don't have the test score, there's no way they're going to be successful. I had, kind of come to believe that myself as a professional. But yeah, it's been really eye-opening. And I think it's been for our college new opportunities to think about how we support students in new ways in college level English and college level math. For a number of years, we had a freshman experience program at Santa Ana College. I also helped co-coordinate, and we provided the academic and co-curricular support through counseling collectively together, and that in their students in their first year. And that was something that was we saw were equally important for our students as they entered college. It was that they got the academic support, but they also got the, we're here for you, counseling support that they needed, career support, figuring out their academic plan and like why they're here and having to navigate some of the challenges. And so I think that's also forced our college and most colleges to have those conversations about how you're going to provide those co-curricular supports, and in addition to the academic support, and maybe push faculty in the math and English areas to think a little bit more thoughtfully about how we might provide just-in-time remediation and support for our students as they're entering. And so I think from my view and my seat as a counselor, as the students are onboarding, yeah, it's a different conversation. And I think it's, students are much more excited, I would say, about entering college. You don't have to have those conversations like, yeah, it's like, the test score, right, is going to hold you back. And then the struggle of seeing students languish in math and English, and just see them fail, repeat, fail, repeat. And, I remember one student finally transferred to UCLA, and I remember he had taken every course in our math sequence twice. That student is now a teacher, a high school art teacher, and does amazing work as an educator. Yet, what we did while he was in community college, I just go, oh my gosh, what were we thinking and doing? But when you know better, you do better. So hopefully, we are doing better by students now with AB 540, AB 705, and all the changes.
Man, I'm really grateful for all those guided pathways researchers and advocates. They looked at the data and was like, this is not good. And now, as you know, there's been just this last 3 weeks, there's been all sorts of research that shows, yes, letting them self-report into a transfer level English or math course we're seeing equity gaps close. We're seeing more students enroll. And so I want to go back to that as we wrap up, to that fourth factor that you mentioned in the beginning of the podcast about the role of faculty. Because when something is seen or is mandated, right? Well, you're going to have now all these students. You have some group of faculty, English and math, that welcome it. Like, okay, I got to up my pedagogical game. I got to figure out how to help these students succeed. It's those faculty that become the role models for future teachers. Because future teachers, these teachers that you mentioned that want to go back to their communities, they have to teach the students that they have, not the students that they wish they had. And unfortunately, that's what's happened in higher ed for so many years, is this mentality. I went to grad school, I'm an expert in math, or I'm an expert in English. And you know what? If they come to me and they're not fully prepared, well, that's not my problem. That mentality has been present for decades, whereas it's really should be, well, I can't control what's happened in their lives. I can't control that they had a really bad experience in K-12. I can't control that some of these students had to work 40 hours a week while they were still in high school, and so they didn't have an opportunity to focus on their studies or to have summer enrichment. None of that. So I got them. And what can I do? And now we're seeing in the data, and I keep pointing this out because there's still a cadre of faculty who just kind of like, oh, I wish we had the days when they can go back, because they're still not fully prepared. And I'm like, what are your success rates? And actually the success rates at many community colleges, what we're finding is actually the same. So they say, oh, we had a 50% success rate, let's say in pre-cal, pre-developmental ed reform. And then they say, see, and now look, it's 50%, or maybe it's 45%. And I say, yeah, but how many more students do you have? That's the key. You have a lot more students who are actually taking pre-cal, who are actually taking calculus than ever before. And so I wanted to hone in on that last factor, Steve, because we cannot forget that when we teach our students, many of these students are, I'm floored. I didn't know that 55% of of teachers in California were community college students. We have to model pedagogy. We have to model the passion and the caring in the classroom. And so, yeah, just that last one I wanted to mention. And as we begin to wrap up, I love student stories. You kind of touched on one. Can you provide another student story of some student, that you knew that went through, and what are they doing now? And we'd love to hear a student story.
The other piece of my study, and something I've been thinking about for a long time, Al, is the role of hope and what that plays in the experience of students. Because I've sat with students for so many years and watched them journey from community college into their professional careers, and seeing them navigate such challenging experiences all the way through. As part of my dissertation, I really wanted to study some of the non-academic factors, and the factor that I picked was hope. And what I learned is that hope is something that's present in the whole experience of these students. And the way it plays out with faculty members are that faculty members can use their position as institutional agents to really provide hope to students. Jeff Duncan Andrade talks about this thing called critical hope, right? And he defines critical hope as both an action and as a verb. It's not something that exists, but it's also something that you do. And he unpacks critical hope into three different areas. And part of the experience of hope is having teachers demonstrate hope, not just by their words, but by their actions. And when I ask students in my dissertation what inspired, what did professors do to inspire hope? It was the relational things. I had one student share with me that she was homeless at one point in time in her community college career. And a professor, not a counselor, a professor had actually gotten her to, and just talking with her, had learned about her homeless situation. And this professor shared with her, and said to her, if your family needs a place to live, come to my house. You can live with me. That stuck with that student for her whole journey. And that's something that really locked her into the role of teachers in being able to really care for their students. Other examples that were shared in my study were teachers who provided financial resources. They student couldn't afford the book, so the professor gave the student the money for the book and said, "Here, go buy the book." Right, and it's those kinds of actions and those kinds of willingness to step in to the student's journey in a significant way and to help them overcome some of the systemic barriers that we know exist and be the person that student needs at that point in time is really, really important. And you don't do that unless you know your students. You don't know, you can't do that unless you actually make the effort to get to know your students on a personal level to see what they're going through. That's the thing that really, I think, I would want to communicate and do communicate with the educators that work in community college and even who become my future teachers, that you get to know your students. You need to know who they are and what their experiences are so that you can help them with the learning process by helping see what other needs that they might have and helping it with those needs. So, I think we don't do that enough. We train our faculty on content expertise, and we measure them in content expertise, and we evaluate them in their teaching strategies. But it's this humanistic aspect of teaching that I think is the most important, and the relational aspect of it, because that makes the difference when if you think back in your own journey of the effective educators you've had, it's those teachers who have connected with you in some way, personally or in another way, that maybe even challenged you to raise to higher expectations that you knew beyond yourself, that really pushed you to do something very different, something you couldn't expect yourself to do. And so, yeah, I think that's part of it. And I guess I'll maybe end with a story here about one of the participants that really struck me. This was a young man who entered the K-12 system, who was first language was not English. He struggled, and he did not have access to a bilingual teacher. And so he was bullied and teased for his inability to speak English. It really traumatized him going through K through 12, and he did not have a favorable experience going through, and always could never find the thing to express himself. So the teacher that he connected with was an art teacher. Because in art class, he was not judged for his speech, he was not judged for his language skills, he was judged for what he could produce, right? And he found that, and he described that as a safe space for him to learn and get connected with. So his journey led him to come to community college, to major in art, to get a degree from a university, and then become an art teacher himself. And then when I asked him, like, as part of my questioning was, what is the hope you want to inspire in your students when you're a teacher? He shared that he really wanted to provide that same space for students who were like him in K through 12, that didn't have a voice, didn't have a way to express themselves, but he wanted to create a space where the students could be who they wanted to be and be their full selves in the K-12 system and in a classroom, and with a teacher who understood their experience. That's powerful, and that's what we need. We need to create educators and produce educators who have that deep commitment, that critical consciousness, the awareness of things to really change the system, It's powerful, and I think that's the way we move forward and we change the system.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. I can relate actually a little bit. I grew up in the New York City public school system, and we had immigrated when I was little. I didn't speak English, and it was a very interesting experience for me when that English is not your first language. And in my journey, actually, it's sad. I really can't point to any K-12 teacher where I can go, wow, this person just blew my mind and was so incredible to me. I actually have to point to, after the military and then going back to school, actually it was a few community college faculty. That's my first experience ever with a teacher who just, it's hard to explain. It just, the passion and kind of putting you under their wing and just letting you know that you matter and that you can do it. Mm-hmm. And so I had a few faculty like that, right? And so this kid who grew up in New York City as like C student, returns to college, and I end up at Cornell. I tell this story a lot because, Cornell is an Ivy, but I wouldn't be there if it wasn't for the faculty. So I'm very passionate about community colleges. I'm trying my best to work on, especially the guided pathways and shared learning piece, is that when I'm trying to help colleges be more intentional about that pillar, I ask them, remember when you had the teacher that kind of blew you away? And they're like, yeah. And then I've asked this question like hundreds of times, and the vast majority of times those teachers were in the minority. Can we just have more of them? You don't have to be an extrovert. I mean, if you're a quiet kind of that's fine. You find your way to do that. So we just need more of those teachers. We call them faculty in higher ed. They're teachers. Mm-hmm. Don't forget, you are a teacher. This was amazing, Steve. Thank you so much. Such good info. I think that the marathon is such a great metaphor, because as you're running a marathon and then you have people on the sidelines giving you water, you have people cheering you on, and then you also have preparing for the marathon, the group of core people that are supporting you or helping you. Those are part of those 4 factors that you mentioned for teacher, right? So if you're going through this teacher ed marathon, you got this idea of building community, the specialized advisement, the early fieldwork experience, the role of faculty and counselors. These are the support group to help you through that marathon. So I want to thank you so much for participating in the Student Success Podcast. So happy running, Steve.
Thanks so much, Al.
Thank you for listening to the Student Success Podcast. Each episode has show notes, which include helpful links and necessary follow-up information to help you get results. Please consider subscribing to the Continuous Learning Institute website. There are no advertisements. It's simply updates about articles, tools, resources, podcasts, etc., all tailored for you, the practitioner. Thank you.